David French is a senior writer for National Review, a senior fellow at the National Review Institute, a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom, and a major in the United States Army Reserve. David, you there?
Yes, I am.
It's great to have you here. Mostly I brought you on because with my beard, we now look so much alike. I just want people to see we can be in the same place at the same time.
Well, I have to tell you that I was at a National Review event not long ago, and I'm walking up next to somebody, and they just walked up and they just threw their arms around me and they said, "Andrew, so wonderful to see you." I'm not making that up.
That's great. Well, it's good. It's good to know I have a fan out there somewhere.
Yes, an exuberant fan, no question.
That's hilarious. When they put the picture up, I thought, "What's that picture of me doing?" Listen, I brought you on. Here's why I brought you on. I brought you on because I know you're a good guy. I know you're a smart guy, and I know you love this country and you're a moral guy. And I literally do not understand your moral position at this point. And I mean that absolutely literally. And I know you can explain it. The thing that really got me was a tweet you sent out after the Michael Cohen hearings or during them that said the porn affairs and hush money payments. You're a NeverTrumper. I think it's fair to describe you as that. The porn affairs and hush money payments by themselves are enough for me to never, ever vote for Trump. And that's just one thing of many. I remember the days way back in, say, May 2015, when that would have been a consensus evangelical position. Now, that position made perfect sense to me until Trump was running against Hillary. So that's, I guess, what I want to ask you. If you get rid of Trump, for the fact that he's sleazy and lived a sleazy life, which we can agree on, what are you left with?
I think you're left with a whole lot better party, a whole lot better conservative movement, and a whole lot better country. So other than that, not much. No, I mean, look, we have to go back a little bit. So, I come at this as I said, as pretty plain from the tweet, as an evangelical Christian.
Right.
Somebody who's been, part of the Christian conservative movement for a really long time, my entire adult life. And, one of the things that I think, one of the more powerful documents that sort of our side of the aisle has crafted was the Southern Baptist Convention statement on the importance of moral character in politics. And this was a document crafted in 1998. Now, what was happening in 1998? This was the height of the Clinton-Lewinsky scandals.
Right.
And that document, which I'd urge everyone who listens to this podcast to read, and especially if you're a Christian, read it and ask yourself, let's just put aside the identity of Bill Clinton, put aside the identity of Donald Trump. Is what it is saying, is what that document's saying, is it theologically true? Okay, and one of the things that it says is that tolerance of serious wrong in public officials sears the conscience of a nation, and it fosters it fosters and spreads additional corruption in a culture. So one of the problems that we have is the evangelical movement, for example, went from the community of people most likely to say that character mattered in a politician and character was important in a politician, to the community of Americans least likely to say that during the 2016 election. I think that is a grave problem. And now let's also add to that that there are consequences to a culture when a nation tolerates serious wrong in its public officials. So there's consequences to a culture. And then also the other thing is I strongly believe, as Andrew Breitbart says, that politics is downstream from culture. In other words, when you are making cultural sacrifices for the sake of political gain, you are forsaking the greater thing for the lesser thing. I do not buy the Flight 93 construct in the 2016 election. I thought that was ridiculous and stupid, actually. I do not buy the nonstop crisis mindset that besets so many people. I actually find it to be faithless and to be, in many ways faithless and in many ways foolish and not informed by facts. And so it's not to say that politics don't matter. but it is to say that culture matters more than politics. And if we degrade our culture for the sake of a short-term political victory, we lose.
Well, now there's certainly a lot of truth in that, and I have always said and always believed that there's going to be a price we pay for having a president like Donald Trump. There's just no question about it. However, the place where I think we diverge is the idea that the losses that we would have taken in a Hillary Clinton would have been short term. Already, we can see that she would have appointed 2 Supreme Court justices, probably 3. She was opposed to the First Amendment. She had hostility toward the First and the Second Amendment. It didn't seem to me like Flight 93. I think there's always another day to fight. But it did seem to me quite a serious moment when, after 8 years of Obama, the American experiment could be in peril. Since that time, it seems that Trump hasn't been anywhere near as bad as I feared he would be. Do you feel that's not true? Do you feel that Trump has been a terrible president all around?
So let me say this. I had 3 main concerns about Trump: Trump's character, Trump's personnel, and Trump's policies. Other than that, I was optimistic. I would say that Trump's character has been worse than I had hoped it would be. I had hoped that he would at least grow some into the office. He's, if anything, behaves worse than he did in the campaign in some respects. His personnel was for a while better than I thought it would be. I was very nervous that you had Steve Bannon that close to the Oval Office. But then when he was gone, and you had Kelly as chief of staff and you had Mattis as secretary of defense, I had more confidence. I'm back to being a little bit more shaky about it. And then his policies, I would give him a B or a B minus. I like his judges. His tax cut was a B minus. I think his emergency declaration is unconstitutional abomination. I think his North Korea policy is incredibly foolish. And I think he's constantly teetering on the edge of incredibly rash decisions in foreign policy that could really make America less safe. So I'm kind of at a B or a B minus. But let me go back to the electoral analysis. And this is something that I think is important for people to understand. We have to, when you're talking about like someone in my position, someone who has, for example, works for a conservative institution, at National Review. I mean, we've been around for 60 plus years, and we sort of are, we try to be and try our best to be stewards of Buckley's legacy and stewards of the health of the conservative movement and the health of conservative ideas. And a disastrous president can set back a movement a really long time. So let me give you a great example. In 1976, Democrats were rejoicing when Jimmy Carter became president. And Carter had some policy victories. We may forget about it now, and the fact he was buried by Reagan. But at the end, we look at his presidency and we say, would Democrats right now say, man, I'm glad Jimmy Carter won in 76? Almost to a man, they'd say no, because what happened next was 12 years of Republican control of the White House, in which those 12 years, the Republicans selected 570 judges and 5 justices of the Supreme Court. And so one of my problems with the Trump era is that I have real fear that what will have happened in 2016 is a short-term gain and a long-term enduring loss. And that's my real concern.
What about long-term losses? I mean, the Democrats seem to me to have actually lost the plot of America. I mean, I don't say that lightly. I'm not like I'm actually kind of middle of the road when it comes to my policies, probably to the left of you in some ways. But when I look at people voting who can't vote to defend babies who have actually been born, who can't vote to denounce anti-Semitism, who literally introduce a Green New Deal, which is simply a blueprint for tyranny and poverty. I mean, it's Venezuela on the page. I do think to myself, well, if we undermine this president, And I'm not talking about criticizing him. I mean, we always criticize the president, but if we undermine him, if we take away his legitimacy, if we say that, gee, the fact that he slept with a porn star, which, by the way, like, I don't even...
Porn stars,
yeah. I mean...
Probably committed felony campaign finance violations to cover it up. I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
Well, I mean, I don't know, campaign finance violation, even the fact the guy was a billionaire, lover boy. That's what those guys do. We knew that when he was elected. But I do not see how that really is in the balance against the lives of babies, the lives of the unborn. He's been a good abortion president, an anti-abortion president. The lives of the unborn and things. This is where you lost me on this tweet. This is where I thought, what is David thinking here? Yeah.
So he undermines himself. I'm not undermining him by pointing out the facts of his behavior. So he undermines himself constantly. He undermines himself with his lack of character. He undermines himself with his impulsiveness. He undermines himself with, quite frankly, his ignorance and often his stupidity. And so he's constantly undermining himself, constantly, which is one of the reasons why we're sitting here in a time of relative peace and prosperity with him just hovering around at, 40, 41, 42% approval.
Yeah, that's his personality.
And one of my problems here is, again, so one of the problems that I had was in 2016, and one of my arguments against him in 2016 was I think that this guy is a long-term disaster. And I fully recognize the Democrats are not doing anything to win over the middle. They are stampeding to the left. And now here's the thing that I think that is so disturbing and disturbing in so many ways about the way Trump constantly undermines himself, constantly displays his bad character, is that he may end up paving the way for a Democratic successor who is more radical than any president we've had in the modern era. And that is something that I think, again, going back to this very notion about who Donald Trump was, who he is, this idea that, that our nation would end unless we put that guy in office. And I'm sitting here thinking, what would I rather be facing for the long-term health of the conservative movement? Is it possible that we're going to sit here and have a President Bernie Sanders sworn in because this guy undermined himself so much, and then we're going to be left with a conservative movement that's credibility to so many members of the American public is shredded by the fact that they could see us with their own eyes justifying and excusing behavior that we would never justify and excuse in any other politician ever. And there's cost to that.
So your position, your moral position is that the long term, even though it is a moment of peace and prosperity, and Trump has to be given some credit for the prosperity, I think, and even the peace maybe, but your idea is that the long term loss of having a man of his obvious low character is more than the cost of having another person of low character, but who wasn't ours, I guess, Hillary Clinton, in office for maybe 8 years.
My position is I was not going to be a party to putting, and I was not going to lend my voice to putting either one of those two people in the Oval Office.
Now, this is the part I want to ask you about, because I do understand. Now I understand at least what you're thinking, which makes me feel a lot better. But here's the thing that I want. You were not going to be a party to it. A lot of the people attacking NeverTrumpers, guys like Rush, and Hannity, are basically accusing you of preserving your own honor at the cost of the country. In other words, you feel good about yourself, you feel virtuous, but you are setting up a victory of baby killing communists essentially by your actions. Is there any validity to that? I mean, is there any validity?
I would say, look, I mean, one of the things I have a standard about a person I will vote for. And both of these are non-negotiable. The person has to have a character that is at least somewhat commiserate with the office that they seek, and they have to share my political values. not perfectly.
No.
Nobody's perfect, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So there are these two elements here, and what I would say is one of the easiest and fastest ways to make sure that we continue to have crappy candidates and people of low character is by voting for them. You know, that's one of the things that we saw in the whole Roy Moore debacle in Alabama, and that is the primary voters of that state served up one of the worst candidates in modern American senatorial politics.
I think that's fair, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so then the argument is, well, we have to. Because if you don't, then you've got that baby killer Doug Jones in, and, you know, mass hysteria, it's all going to be awful. And so you continually end up in a situation where if you do not impose a cost for selecting low character, low quality people, you get more low character and low quality people. And the problem that I have with the Hannity and Rush argument is that, you know, the Hannity and Rush argument essentially says, okay, 2016, we had the only thing to consider in 2016 was 2016. And I'm sitting there looking and I'm saying the thing that I'm considering in 2016 isn't just 2016, it's 2020, it's 2024. Right. What does my movement, what is the witness of my faith going forward? And which
David, I have to stop you here. I'm actually out of time. But at least now I understand. Come back and let's talk more about this, because you're eloquent and I can at least understand what you're saying now, which, as I say, makes me feel better. It's great talking to you, David. And let's do it again.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks so much.
All right.